Okay, let's dive into something really fascinating today. We've got this article, Billionaires' Black Playbook, Dark Money Tactics and Wealth Secrets They Don't Want You to Know. It's from Startup Literature. And it kicks off with this pretty provocative idea, right? That there's this like hidden financial system
Yeah.
running parallel to the one most of us know, mainly used by the ultra-wealthy. It even hits you with that quote, two sets of laws in America, one for the rich, one for everyone else.
Yeah, that line definitely grabs you. And, the article makes it clear it's not always about illegal stuff. Not really. It's more about these legal strategies, these structures, this knowledge that, frankly, most people just don't know about or have access to. It really underlines the power of specialized financial and legal know-how.
Absolutely. And
Yep.
that's what we want to unpack today for you. Our goal in this deep dive is, well, to pull back that curtain a bit, what are these tactics the article talks about? Why are the wealthy using them? And maybe most importantly, how can you, listening now, kind of grasp the principles behind them? Maybe even adapt some things for yourself, starting small.
Think of it like learning the advanced rule book for the game. You might not be playing at that billionaire level yet, obviously, but just understanding how they operate. That can fundamentally change how you approach your own financial path.
Okay, so where does this playbook even start? According to the article, it's not actually with the money itself. It begins with mindset.
Right. A fundamental difference in how they look at possibilities, at risk, at challenges.
Which raises that classic chicken and egg question, doesn't it?
Yep.
Is it the money that enables the mindset or the mindset that leads to the money?
Well, the article really leans into the idea that the mindset comes first. It hammers the shift from, like, a scarcity view, resources are limited, fear of loss, to an abundance mindset, actively looking for opportunities.
I thought the practical tip here was really strong. Changing, can I afford this, to how can I afford this?
Mm.
That simple switch, it just flips your brain into problem-solving mode, instead of just hitting a wall. The article mentions Elon Musk with SpaceX, building rockets. Seemed impossible, but he focused on how it could be done differently.
That's a perfect example, shifting from just reacting to proactively solving the puzzle. And this mindset, it also totally changes their approach to risk. See, the wealthy don't necessarily avoid risk, they just calculate it differently. They understand that doing nothing, taking zero risk, that can actually be the biggest risk to growing wealth long term.
Okay, so how do they calculate it differently? What's the core idea there?
It's about being objective
Mhm.
and looking for asymmetric opportunities. So instead of just asking, what's the worst that could happen? They balance that with, okay, but what's the potential massive upside? It's a more, let's say, sophisticated risk assessment. The article brings up Ray Dalio's risk parity idea. It's not about getting rid of risk. It's about diversifying the types of risk you take. So your portfolio does better across different, economic situations, balancing outcomes.
That balancing act sounds key. And another core concept the article brings up is the velocity of money. Money moving faster grows faster.
Exactly. It's a major priority. Keep the capital working, constantly moving it through investments, through assets that appreciate or throw off income. Don't just let it sit there getting eaten by inflation or taxes. The 1031 exchange in real estate. Classic example. You sell a property, make a big profit, say $500,000. Instead of cashing out and paying capital gains right away, you use a 1031 exchange. You roll all of that profit, the whole $500, into a new property, tax deferred. So 100% of that profit keeps working for you, compounding, instead of, losing a big chunk to taxes right off the bat.
Okay, so get the mindset right, keep the money moving. What's next in the playbook? The article calls it building money machines, creating multiple income streams.
Yeah, this is where they really move beyond just relying on a salary, right? The focus shifts. Build systems that generate passive or semi-passive income that lets wealth compound much, much faster. It's about having these sophisticated income networks, not just one pipe.
The article mentioned some interesting alternative investments. Digital real estate definitely caught my eye.
Yeah, it's not just about pretty websites. It's buying actual profitable online businesses, existing e-commerce stores, blogs with ad revenue, software tools. The strategy is often, buy something small but profitable, tweak it, improve the operations or marketing. Then you either hold it for the income or flip it later for more. They give an example. An e-commerce store bought for $120,000, consistently making $4,000 a month profit. That's a solid return. The principle: find existing cash-flowing assets and make them better.
And then there's private lending. Basically, you become the bank.
Yes, instead of borrowing, you're lending, often secured by assets, which is key. The article suggests maybe starting with Simpler stuff like peer-to-peer lending, P2P, just to get a feel for it. Then maybe graduate to bigger loans, real estate, small businesses where you have collateral protecting your capital. They mentioned a retired exec lending 250K at like 12-15% interest annually. That's way better than typical bonds, right? The idea is using your capital to earn interest, setting the terms, managing risk with collateral.
The article also gets into what it calls the invisible market, assets outside the usual stocks and bonds.
Right. Think alternative assets, collectibles, fine art, rare watches, vintage cars, even like high-end trading cards now. These are tangible things. They can appreciate a lot, and often they don't move in lockstep with the stock market, which is good for diversification, the strategy, deep research into that specific niche, careful buying, secure storage, obviously, and keeping a close eye on values and trends. The example was a tech exec buying 75K of rare Rolexes 5 years later, worth over $200. Here's the potential, right? Finding value in these specialized tangible market.
And royalty-based income. That feels very almost like old school landlording, but for ideas.
Exactly. Intellectual property. Create it or buy it, like a software plugin, a popular ebook, music rights, a patent. Then you license it out to others. You get paid repeatedly for its use. The software dev who licensed a plugin, pulling in $30,000 a month recurring revenue, that's powerful. Instead of just selling it once, the principle is making money from owning non-physical assets that can be copied and licensed, basically infinitely.
Okay, so we build income streams. Now, the article spends a lot of time on something everyone thinks about, but the wealthy approach differently.
Yeah.
Taxes. Playing tax chess, they call it.
Oh, yeah, this is huge, absolutely fundamental, and the article's clear. We're talking legal minimization. This isn't tax evasion. It's treating tax planning like a complex game of strategy, using every single legal move available to cut down their liability.
And a big part of that seems to be using corporate shields, turning personal-ish expenses into business write-offs.
Yes, exactly. By setting up the right kind of business entity, an LLC, an S-corp, common structures for small businesses, consultants, freelancers, you can legally deduct a whole range of expenses related to that business. Things a regular employee just can't deduct. Home office, business travel, tech, certain meals, professional development. The example of a consultant using an S-corp. Legally cutting their taxable income by over $50,000 compared to if they were just a W-2 employee. That shows the massive difference it can make. The principle is using the business structure to maximize deductions.
There's a more advanced one mentioned for real estate folks, cost segregation studies. Sounds technical.
It is a bit technical, but powerful for property owners, commercial or rental homes. See, normally you depreciate the whole building over like 27.5 or 39 years. Slow process. A cost seg study breaks the property down. It identifies components, plumbing, wiring, carpets, landscaping, fixture stuff that wears out faster. And you can depreciate those things much faster, maybe 5, 7, or 15 years. This pulls huge depreciation deductions into the early years, creating big tax savings now. The article's example, a $2 million commercial property, cost segregation gets them a $400,000 deduction in year 1. Normal depreciation, maybe 50K. Huge difference. It's a legal way to accelerate deductions.
They also use geography, right? Border hopping billions.
Again, not about illegal hiding. It's about strategically placing yourself or your income where taxes are lower or zero. For U.S. citizens living abroad, there's the Foreign Income Exclusion, FEIE. If you meet the residency tests, you can exclude a big chunk of your foreign earnings from U.S. tax. The article said up to $120,000 that year. The digital nomad living in Thailand, legally excluding $110K. That's a real-world example.
And even within the U.S., just picking the right state.
Absolutely. Setting up legal residency, your domicile, in a state with no state income tax. Florida, Texas, Nevada, Wyoming. For high earners, this can save literally hundreds of thousands a year. The exec moving from California to Florida, saving over $100K annually in state tax. Perfectly legal. It's leveraging those jurisdictional tax differences.
They're also masters of timing when it comes to tax. Deferring payment.
The 1031 exchange we talked about. Classic timing tactic. Roll real estate profits into a new property, push the tax bill way down the road, maybe indefinitely until you finally cash out for good. The article mentioned an investor keeping a full $1 million profit working through a 1031. Instead of paying maybe $300K in tax right away, that compounding effect is huge. Tax deferral is powerful.
And tax loss harvesting. Selling stuff at a loss sounds weird for building wealth.
It's strategic tax management. You deliberately sell investments that have gone down in value. You realize that loss on paper. Then You use those losses to cancel out capital gains you made somewhere else in your portfolio. You can even use up to $3,000 a year against your regular income. So the savvy investor uses $50 in stock losses to offset $50 in real estate gains. Boom, the tax on those real estate profits just disappears. Legally, you're turning a loss into a tax asset.
Okay, so build income, minimize taxes. But the article really stresses that protecting the wealth is just as vital, building a crisis-proof fortune.
Yeah, this is often missed by people just focused on growth. The wealthy build layers of protection. They hold untouchable assets, things that tend to hold value, or even go up when the economy gets shaky.
Like precious metals, gold, silver.
Yep. They act as a hedge against inflation, currency losing value. They often move in the opposite direction to stocks and bonds. The example of the hedge fund manager had 20% in gold during the 2008 crash. That part of his portfolio went up 25% while stocks were tanking. It demonstrates that safe haven role, diversifying into tangible stores of value that aren't correlated.
And specific kinds of real estate too, right? Not just any building.
Exactly. They prefer income-producing properties in sectors that hold up well in recessions, with low debt. Think essential businesses, grocery stores, medical offices, self-storage. These tend to keep tenants and cash flow better than, say, fancy retail or hotels when things get tough. The grocery-anchored shopping center stayed 95% full during the 2020 pandemic. That shows resilience. It's about durable, income-producing assets with low leverage.
Something that might surprise people is this idea of actively getting ready to profit when everyone else is panicking. Profiting when others panic.
This takes discipline and cash. They keep significant cash reserves, maybe 15%, 30% of their portfolio, especially when the economy feels frothy. Then, when a crisis hits, asset prices crash. They've got the cash ready. They swoop in and buy distressed assets, real estate, stocks, businesses at huge discounts. The investor who put $5 million to work during the '08 housing crisis, buying foreclosures at 40–60% off, tripled that portfolio by 2015. That's classic contrarian crisis investing. Have the dry powder, act decisively when there's blood in the streets.
The article also mentioned asymmetric investing. Sounds a bit complicated.
It just means looking for bets where the potential upside is way, way bigger than the potential downside. Venture capital is the classic example. You put a small amount, something you can afford to lose, into several high-risk, high-reward startups. Most will probably fail. That's expected. But if just one hits it big, becomes a unicorn, the return can be astronomical. Like the example, a $10,000 investment turns into $10 million. That one win pays for all the losses and then some. It's about carefully allocating risk for massive potential rewards.
They also use these borderless billionaire tactics, protecting against risks tied to just one country.
Yeah, it's about diversifying geographically. Gives them options. Second passport programs, for instance. You get citizenship in another country, often through investment. It provides mobility, options, if things go sideways politically or economically back home. The Portugal Golden Visa, investing $500K in real estate for EU residency, eventually citizenship. That's one path. Offers huge freedom of movement.
And just having money spread across different countries.
Multi-jurisdictional banking. Simple as opening accounts, holding assets in stable countries. Strong legal systems, different currencies. It hedges against a banking crisis in your home country or your currency collapsing. The business owner who can still access foreign accounts when their home country's banks froze up. That shows the practical value. Globalize your financial footprint for security, for options.
Okay, beyond economic shocks, the article talks about protecting wealth from legal threats. Lawsuits, creditors, divorce even, building an untouchable empire with legal force fields.
This is another critical layer.
Right.
Using specific legal structures to shield assets from claims. Trusts are really foundational here.
Like irrevocable trusts.
Exactly. Unlike a basic revocable trust where you still control everything, once assets go into an irrevocable trust, they're legally separate from you. Poof, gone from your personal ownership. This creates a strong shield against future lawsuits or creditors. The example of the surgeon facing a malpractice suit. His investments, his real estate protected, because they were owned by his irrevocable trust. Key thing is, the trust has to be set up and funded correctly before any trouble starts. You can't do it after you've been sued. It's about legally separating assets for protection proactively.
And a dynasty trusts. They sound like they're built to last forever.
Pretty much, yeah. Or for incredibly long times. You set them up in states with really favorable trust laws like South Dakota or Delaware. They're designed to pass wealth down through many generations, minimizing estate taxes along the way. and protecting the assets from beneficiaries' future creditors or divorces. The article mentioned a $30 million South Dakota trust, structured for protection for up to 360 years. It's about perpetual asset protection and tax minimization across generations.
They also look offshore for extra layers, right? Offshore structures.
Right. Certain international places have really strong asset protection laws baked in.
Yeah.
Offshore asset protection trusts, often set up in places like the Cook Islands or Nevis. They're specifically designed to make it incredibly difficult, incredibly expensive for creditors to get at the assets inside. Again, timing is key. Got to move assets early. The real estate developer shielding wealth from a $5 million lawsuit using a Cook Islands trust. That's the idea. Leveraging favorable international laws.
And layering different companies in different places.
Multi-layered corporate structures. Across different jurisdictions, it creates complexity, separation, maybe use entities in privacy-friendly U.S. states like Wyoming or Nevada, then layer those with entities overseas. It makes it incredibly hard, very costly for someone to try and pierce through all those layers to get to the actual assets. Example using Wyoming, Nevada, and Nevis entities together. That shows how multiple legal layers can protect things. It's about creating distance and legal complexity.
It sounds like the goal is often to maintain control, but look like you own nothing directly. The invisible owner.
That's definitely the aim sometimes. Anonymous LLCs, for instance, in states like Wyoming or Nevada, you can own property or a business through an LLC without your name being easily found on public records. Huge for privacy, for security, especially for, public figures. This celebrity buying a vacation home through a Wyoming LLC to keep it private. Simple example, privacy through legal structure.
And private family foundations, they're not just for charity.
Well, they are often used for charitable giving, yes, but they can also be vehicles for asset protection and privacy. You transfer assets to the foundation owns and manages them based on its charter. It creates another layer of separation from personal ownership. And they can be structured for private asset management, supporting family causes, like that Liechtenstein Foundation example, using philanthropic structures for private asset control.
Wow. That is quite a playbook. An incredible overview of these strategies. So after all that, what does this mean for you listening? The article tries to address this in its Your Roadmap part.
Yeah, it's really important to get this. While, a lot of these advanced tactics are for people with serious wealth, the underlying principles, and some specific strategies, they are adaptable no matter where you're starting from. It's about taking a systematic approach.
The article mentions a wealth acceleration blueprint. Phases, right? Foundation first, personal finance basics, education. Then structure using basic legal tools like an LLC, a will. Then growth diversifying income, investing smartly. They gave an example in Entrepreneur. Reduce taxes by $37K, add $4,500 a month in passive income just by following that kind of blueprint. Shows the impact even if you're not a billionaire.
And they highlight concrete ways to start building those automated income streams. They're money machine factory ideas. Digital real estate, private lending, royalty income. The example of an ebook. Generating $120,000 in passive income over 3 years. That shows these aren't just for the super rich. They're achievable starting points. Building income that isn't directly tied to your time.
And finally, they suggest using a financial fortress checklist, looking at your own situation. Legal, tax, income, asset protection.
It's a practical tool. They shared an example. A family, $3.5 million net worth. Used the checklist, realized, hey, income's good, but wow, we have big gaps in asset protection. So it prompted them to put those legal structures in place before any problems hit. It's about proactive risk assessment, plugging the holes in your financial defense.
Okay, so stepping back from this whole deep dive into the Billionaires Black Playbook, what's the main thing you hope listeners take away?
I think it's that building and protecting serious wealth isn't magic. It's a deliberate, multifaceted strategy, and it's entirely legal. It's less about secrets and more about specialized knowledge, consistent action, and really integrating your financial, legal, and tax planning together holistically.
And for you, listening now, just understanding these advanced tactics, that's the critical first step. The key is then figuring out which principles apply to your life right now and taking some action, even a small one, on the strategies that make sense for you.
Yeah, and the article reminds us, right? True financial freedom, it's not just about a big number in an account. It's the ability that money gives you to live life on your terms, make choices based on your values, support causes you care about, provide security for your family.
So maybe here's a final thought for you to chew on after today's deep dive. How does seeing the financial world through this lens, this focus on legal optimization, on perpetual asset protection, on building income streams separate from your time, how does that change your perspective? on opportunities, risks, even the normal financial system you use every day. Thinking about your own situation, what's maybe one small principle or one potential strategy we talked about that you could explore further, or even take a tiny first step on starting today to build your own foundation or your own automated income stream?